been said many times about many different places that the railroads truly made the communities of the White Mountains great. And this is a perfect example of that right here in Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Plymouth was a hotbed of railroad activity. It was a meeting place between the Boston, Concord, and Montreal Main Line and the Pemigewasset Valley branch, which curved its way up into the mountains in North Woodstock and Lincoln. Eventually, both were acquired by the Boston and Maine, and Plymouth was active both day and night. The town boasted a sizable yard, a turntable, a roundhouse, and one of the more impressive stations around, housed within the palatial Pemigewasset House, one of the grand hotels of that bygone era. Later on, Plymouth became a stop for the Alouette, a crack passenger train jointly operated by the Boston and Maine and the Canadian Pacific between Boston and Montreal. But the main line to Woodsville and Wells River closed in October 1954, and the connection was forever severed. Plymouth's importance as a railroad center began to wane, and with trains only running from Concord up the Pemigewasset Valley branch to Lincoln, there wasn't any need for large facilities. The Boston and Maine consolidated all the remaining trackage as the White Mountain branch, and after regular service ended to Plymouth in 1959, things started to get a little slow around here. But thankfully, Plymouth is one of those places where the legend still lives on. These tracks are still active, and you can experience some of that glory on the Winnipesaukee Scenic Railroad's foliage trains every autumn. And the beautiful B&M station here, built in 1909 as a replacement when the Pemmy House burned, is home to the Plymouth Senior Center, which hosts 2 Boston and Maine Historical Society meetings here every May and October.
There used to be a Boston and Maine freight house here in Plymouth as well, in addition to the station. They just tore it down recently, and it looks like they've ripped up some of the rail as well. They're going to put in an apartment building. It's a sad sight to see. You know, the railroad truly made Plymouth the city that it is today. It was here that passengers would detrain on their way north and stay in the grand Pemigewasset House. It was in that same hotel, which had a railroad station on the first floor, that the great poet Nathaniel Hawthorne passed away on a trip up here with his friend, President Franklin Pierce of New Hampshire. Indeed, the railroad really had a big role to play here in Plymouth, and you can still see some remnants if you walk around today. This boxcar was spotted here at Merrimack Farmers Exchange by the Boston and Maine in June 1973, and not shortly thereafter the line was embargoed due to flood damage between Meredith and Lincoln. And they never retrieved it, and even though the line was opened up in 1975 and bought by the state of New Hampshire, it still sits right here.